One of the greatest liabilities for Joe Biden as he campaigned for the White House was his own son, Hunter.
The son of President Joe Biden has known no shortage of controversy in recent years.
He had a roaring sex addiction, videotaping every aspect of his life.
Then walked in a customer clutching MacBook Pros.
It's not stuff that you would ever want to see the light of day.
Offering to pay Joe Biden himself.
Hunter Biden is the most protected person in the country.
Hunter got thrown out of the military for cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president.
He was given race and favor jobs.
These doors magically open.
He made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
To understand how Hunter Biden became one of the most scandal-plagued personalities in America, we have to start from the very beginning. But first, if you don't want to end up like Hunter with all your personal information in the wrong hands, then you might want to check today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is an identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, VPN, password management, and antivirus software, all combined into one easy-to-use app. Imagine trying to log into your email account only to find out your password has been changed hours ago. And you start getting notifications of activity from your bank, credit cards, crypto accounts, etc. That's why Aura monitors the dark web for any of your emails, passwords, and social security numbers and sends alerts fast straight to your phone and email. I thought I'd done everything to secure my information, but I was actually shocked by how many times Aura found my passwords on the dark web. Aura also gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, like someone opening a loan or credit card in your name. One of my favorite features in Aura is its integrated VPN that allows me to stay anonymous online and keeps my personal information encrypted. 1/3 of Americans had experienced identity theft.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. Millions of families suffer every year.
If you don't want to be one of them, go to aura.com/thenerd and protect yourself and your family. Link is also in the description. And if you sign up today, Aura will give you a no-risk 2-week free trial if you use my link, so you can see for yourself how many times your and your family's information have been found on the dark web. Thank you, Aura, for sponsoring this video. It's 1972, and Joe Biden is sworn into office for a Delaware Senate seat in a Wilmington, Delaware hospital where his 2 young sons, Hunter and Beau, were taken after being severely injured in a car accident that killed Biden's wife and baby daughter Naomi. Joe used the tragedy of his first wife and daughter's death to his advantage and even lied about it on multiple occasions. No alcohol had been found in the system of the man who crashed into them, and yet Joe claimed he was a drunk. He was generally an insecure man who constantly lied about his life and claimed his college academic experience was way more successful than it actually was.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I won the international moot court competition. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. He used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground, and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
And he had to apologize for stealing a speech from Robert Kennedy word for word.
It doesn't measure the beauty of our poetry, the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials.
Joe's second son, Hunter, studied at Georgetown University and graduated in 1992. It was while earning his undergraduate history degree that he began to ramp up his social drinking habit into smoking Marlboro Reds and occasionally using cocaine, all of which will turn into lifelong addictions. After graduation, he spent a year in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps before graduating from Yale Law School in 1996. In 1997, he assumed a role as an executive vice president at MBNA Bank.
He took a job with MBNA, which is a massive bank in Delaware. They hired Hunter as a finance executive. He didn't have background in finance.
He left the role shortly after and got appointed as a director in the Department of Commerce by President Bill Clinton. Throughout his life, Hunter's careers were a product of his father's name and connections. After Hunter graduated from Yale as a lawyer, he was making more money than his father, who was a U.S. senator.
Hunter Biden's life has really been laid out for him by his father, who assigned Hunter the role in the family of being the bag man, the money maker. He was given these jobs with enormous salaries well beyond his credentials.
Hunter was expected to pay a lot of bills, including Beau's college tuition.
I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard. But don't worry, unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary.
Needless to say that he grew up with all the money and power anyone could ever wish for. And with great power
comes the absolute certainty that you'll turn into a right.
In June 2009, he co-founded the private equity firm Rosemont Seneca Partners, and through his companies and his partners, he established various business connections to figures in Russia and China. And after Joe became vice president, Hunter was greeted by even more opportunities, as Joe's relationship with China's Xi Jinping was worth millions. But that would come back to haunt him later on.
Every famous, infamous international person who came to Washington, D.C. and met with his father, Hunter generally got an introduction.
Foreign oligarchs and foreign governments are currying favor and getting favors from the most powerful family in America.
Addiction was the main theme in Hunter's life. Cocaine, crack, alcohol, you name it. He'd been in and out of rehab 6 times throughout his life and never seemed to get his act together, which was ironic considering his father was one of the lead activists of the war on drugs.
The president says he wants to wage a war on drugs, but if that's true, what we need is another D-Day, not another Vietnam.
Hunter sparked confusion when he, then 44 years old, enlisted in the Navy Reserves in 2013.
We have a lot of bad judgment in my family. My son, who's over 40, just joined the United States Navy. He's about to be sworn in as an officer.
Less than a year before reports broke that the reserve discharged him in 2014 after he tested positive for cocaine. He had married his wife, Kathleen, in July 1993. But 3 daughters and 2 decades later, their marriage was rocky. After his discharge from the Naval Reserves, the couple were trying to get through their issues. But to make matters worse, Hunter's brother Beau died of brain cancer in May 2015, which destroyed Hunter. And their marriage went downhill from there, and at the end of 2016, Kathleen filed for divorce.
I'm leaving you because you're having an affair, and you've been emotionally abusive. I forgave you for cheating before. I tried to help you get sober, and you made it clear throughout the past year that you didn't want to be with me.
After Beau's death, Hunter had moved in with his brother's widow and her kids, and Kathleen was convinced that he was having an affair.
She accused him in emails of cheating on her. She accused him of starting up a romantic relationship with Beau's widow, Hallie, which in fact was the case.
Hunter's infidelity was no secret. Earlier in 2015, a data breach led to the release of the names of all men using AshleyMadison.com, a dating site for married people looking to cheat, and Hunter's name was on the list.
Their motto was, "Life is short, have an affair." I was sitting on the side porch when I saw Hunter's name on the list. It almost felt comical.
Hunter's spending was insane and irresponsible, and he was not giving Kathleen enough money to support their kids and pay essential bills.
We didn't have any savings. Both of our houses had a double mortgage and no equity. We had credit card debt and medical bills. We were in terrible financial shape. The sheer amount of our debt overwhelmed me. We owed as much for both houses as when we bought them. We were underwater.
He spent the aftermath of his brother's death on a bender that included him buying crack from homeless people. He also said that he and Hallie discovered they were sharing a very specific grief and spent a lot of time together in 2016 before they became a couple. Hunter and Kathleen's divorce was finalized on April 14, 2017, while he was in Delaware with Hallie. He had to pay $37,000 a month in alimony, which would heavily affect his finances as his crack addiction got worse. Hunter and Hallie's relationship was even odder than it seemed. He would record videos of them and upload them on that site. He constantly needed reassurance from her that he was better than his brother Beau, and at times they seemed to hate each other.
You say I'm not my brother and never will be. You tell people I got you addicted. You make a fool of me. Shame me for wanting you. And every time I crawl back.
He even recorded an argument between them on his laptop and was constantly spying on her and extracting her phone data and voicemails.
I'm not arguing, Allie. I'm asking you.
Okay, I don't know. I think we should schedule a visit and we'll talk with the therapist. I'm not going to continue to argue, and I don't want to talk and make things worse.
There was a lot of paranoia, and I think a lot of it might have been drug related. He would be checking her phone logs. He would be secretly recording her.
In 2018, a paranoid hunter accused Hallie of throwing away his gun in a garbage can near a school. Under federal law, anyone who uses or is addicted to illegal drugs is banned from purchasing firearms. Something he hasn't been charged with up until now.
She stole my gun out of my truck lockbox and threw it in a garbage can full to the top at Jansen's. Then told me it was my problem to deal with. Then when the police, the FBI, the Secret Service came on the scene, she said she took it from me because she was scared I would harm myself due to my drug and alcohol problem and our volatile relationship.
Hunter's love interests didn't only include his brother's widow, but also her sister, whom he was texting constantly.
And then Hunter and Liz have this bizarre, quite intimate relationship, which starts off with text messages where Hunter is just complaining about Hallie. But then it gets sexual.
There are an incredible series of text messages that were really quite shocking when I found them on the laptop. It's an incredible shift from not only setting up a relationship with his brother's widow, but then with her sister.
We should shower together by FaceTime every morning or night when we're up at 3. Stress relief. I'll teach you how to master.
And in his memoir, he claimed that he befriended a street-dwelling addict and invited her to stay in his home. He devoted nearly an entire chapter to a woman, Rhea, he writes he loved as much as any friend he's ever loved. He trusted her to live in his apartment, even though she was a criminal and had one son on death row and another serving life in prison. In an exclusive interview with DailyMail.com, Rhea said that she never lived with him, merely worked as his cleaner, and that his tale about her alleged criminal sons was entirely fabricated for him to sell more of his book.
It seems like Hunter's tried to paint this image of himself as a very generous person and having this heartwarming relationship, albeit it's an unlikely relationship with this woman, and she says that in fact he's just trying to make money off her story in his book.
And in 2019, a DNA test found he was the biological and legal father of a child born to an exotic dancer called London Alexis Roberts.
There's a very interesting story about London Roberts that at first was told in the media, that she was a stripper at a DC club that Hunter frequented, that he knocked her up in one fling one night, and that he had no recollection of it. But it turned out that she was actually an employee at his firm, Rosemont Seneca.
She and Hunter had a relationship that went on for at least several months. You can see that on the laptop where, for instance, he used to smuggle her into his office building.
She gives him the due date of the baby and he never responds. And then 3 months after the baby's born, he texts his assistant asking her to make sure that the medical insurance has been stripped from this woman.
The girl was later named Navy, and neither Hunter nor his family acknowledge her.
He also, on the flap jacket, talks about his children, his 3 daughters and his son with his latest wife, Melissa, but he never mentions the daughter that he had with London Roberts.
After settling a paternity suit with Miss Roberts, Hunter wed South African filmmaker Melissa Cohen only 6 days after meeting her, and they had a son together named Beau. Back in 2014, after a change of regime in Ukraine, Hunter joined the board of a scandal-plagued Ukrainian national gas company named Burisma. He was one of several foreigners on its board, and he had no apparent qualifications for the job, except that his father was the vice president and involved in the Obama administration's Ukraine policy.
The company was owned by a pro-Russian Ukrainian oligarch. Once again, Hunter, zero experience in Ukraine, zero experience in oil, gas, but was paid millions of dollars.
Burisma turned into a major enabler during my steepest skid into addiction. The board fee had morphed into a wicked sort of funny money. It hounded me to spend recklessly, dangerously, destructively, humiliatingly. So I did.
Burisma's owner, a guy called Nikolai Zlochevsky, who was in a lot of trouble internationally. There were various inquiries into the theft of billions of dollars from the Ukrainian treasury. His assets had been frozen. Now, he needed protection, and Hunter Biden was his protection.
It was so shady that Joe Biden pushed for the firing of Ukraine's top prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, to end an investigation into Burisma in order to protect his son. At the time, officials throughout the Obama administration and in Western Europe had come to a consensus that Shokin wasn't doing enough to crack down on corruption.
Lo and behold, when the chief prosecutor of Ukraine, a man called Viktor Shokin, started to investigate the corruption at Burisma and seized all the property of the owner of Burisma, Zlochevsky, Joe Biden became really insistent that the government of Ukraine had to sack Viktor Shokin, the chief prosecutor, or he would withhold $1 billion of aid.
I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
So far, it sounds like your typical corrupt politician story. Until this happened.
My name is John Paul Mac Isaac, and I'm the former owner of the Mac Shop in Wilmington, Delaware. It was Friday, April 12th, 2019, right before I closed, and walked in a gentleman carrying 3 MacBook Pros. I could definitely tell that he was inebriated. And even though at this time I didn't recognize him, he was a bit beyond my visual acuity range. When I asked for his last name, there was a long pause and he kind of sarcastically added Biden.
Since he had signed a work order with the shop, after 90 days, the contents became the legal property of the owner.
During my research, there was just so much homemade pornography on his laptop that it was disgusting. It was hard to work through.
In August, after hearing about Burisma in the news, he looked through the emails and texts on the drive.
There was a file called income.pdf. I decided that would be the file that I would open up to verify that the data transfer is actually working. And that's when I opened up that document and I saw that he had made $1.2 million in 2014 for Burisma.
He decided to bring the contents forward, and in December 2019, 2 FBI agents took them. By August 2020, nothing new had been brought forward from the laptop's contents, so he contacted Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, about it, who forwarded the evidence to journalists in New York.
I identified myself as Bob Costello, Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. I've seen the email that you sent to Rudy's attention. I'm interested if you've obtained that material legally. There is a massive amount of material here that's very damaging to Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Jim Biden. It's not stuff that you would ever want to see the light of day if you were any of those people.
On October 14, the first set of information from the laptop was published in the New York Post. A few hours later, Facebook and Twitter limited the reach of the story, claiming that it needed to be verified.
The FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team. It was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. The distribution on Facebook was decreased.
Say the distribution is decreased.
It got shared.
How does that work?
Basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
Claims about the fraudulent nature of the laptop's contents circulated. The CIA, as well as national intelligence, stated that there was Russian involvement and that the goal was to help Donald Trump win.
Obviously, we're not going with the New York Post story right now on Hunter Biden.
I'm no Russian agent. I'm a former federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. I'm the furthest thing you could have to a Russian agent. This stuff is genuine. I understand why they want to run away from it, but you can't run away from reality.
The laptop included thousands of emails, text messages, photos, and videos detailing Hunter's drug use, sex life, and love affair with his brother's widow. For instance, one of the videos showed Hunter smoking crack in one of the rehab centers that his dad was paying for, alongside other pictures with random prostitutes, more homemade videos, and messages showing him using racial slurs.
There's other things that Hunter has texted. He was having a joking conversation with his lawyer, and he uses the N-word multiple times. He hasn't responded to our questions about it. He hasn't said whether it was said in jest, but even if it was, a white man using the N-word is just a total no-go. You should not do that, and yet Hunter does multiple times.
Most importantly, the laptop contained evidence of his shady business dealings in China, Ukraine, and Russia. The contents of this laptop heavily implicated Joe Biden as well. They were in deep. Despite Joe constantly claiming that he has no idea about his son's overseas business dealings,
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings. I don't know what he was doing. I know he was on the board. I found out he was on the board after he was on the board, and that was it.
the laptop showed otherwise in a lot of detail. The Biden family's suspicious ties extended far beyond China and Ukraine, as many emails from the laptop showed dealings with people like Ara Abramian, a Russian oligarch and Putin's right hand at the time, the richest woman in Russia, Elena Baturina, Karim Masimov, the former Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, Devon Archer, one of Burisma's board members who was later convicted to fraud, and the list goes on. But the biggest deal Hunter was involved in took place in 2017 when he landed a contract with CEFC China Energy Co., an oil and gas conglomerate tied to the CCP and the People's Liberation Army. Hunter and his uncle, James Biden, went right to work to structure a Chinese joint venture. Their plan was to build an investment firm like Goldman Sachs, in which Joe Biden would be actively involved once he left office. One of the joint ventures would be crafted by Tony Bobulinski, who met with Joe Biden for his sign-off at the Beverly Hilton in 2017. Less than 2 weeks after meeting Joe Biden, Bobulinski incorporated Sinohawk Holdings LLC, which would be 50% owned by CEFC China Energy Chairman Yi Jianming and 50% owned by Juanita Holdings LLC, with 10% of that cut going to the big guy, whom Bobulinski identified as Joe Biden. That deal would eventually pay the Bidens $4.8 million over the span of 14 months.
The deal is about to come down, then a senior official at CEFC named Patrick Ho gets arrested on bribery charges in New York, and it blows up the entire deal.
Hunter actually signed $1 million retainer with Patrick Ho to represent him as soon as this FBI investigation came to their knowledge. It's unclear why Patrick Ho paid Hunter so much money for that.
Federal agents at the time were monitoring Mr. Ho as a potential spy or agent for China.
Patrick Ho's arrest just led to this domino effect of disaster for Hunter and his business partners in China.
Mr. Yi, too, found himself in hot water. In 2018, he was detained in China for unspecified economic crimes and hasn't been heard from since. The New York Times profiled Mr. Yi, whom Hunter Biden called his partner, in December of that year.
I have another New York Times reporter calling about my representation of literally, Dr. Patrick Ho, the spy chief of China, who started the company that my partner, who was worth $323 billion, founded, and is now missing.
After the article came out, Joe Biden left a voicemail on his son's phone, saying,
Hey, pals, Dad, it's 8:15 on Wednesday night. I thought the article, at least the thing online, was going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think you're clear. In a good way. If you get a chance, give me a call. I love you.
These lead back to the ultimate premise of the entire hard drive, which is what was the extent of Joe's involvement in the foreign business dealings? He has said it was zero. We know it really wasn't zero. So the question is it like 1%, 10%, 100%?
Why is there a voicemail of the president talking to his son about his overseas business dealings if the president has said he's never spoken to his son about his overseas business?
Well, first I'll say that what the president said stands. So if that's what the president said, that is what stands. And secondly,
a New York Times article concerning Hunter Biden's business dealings, and he says, "I think you're clear." How is that not him talking to his son about his overseas business dealings?
We're not, from this podium, I am not going to talk about alleged materials from the laptop.
So, is Hunter Biden in any kind of trouble? Well, not really. In 2018, the Justice Department opened a quiet investigation into his finances. Although prosecutors have long declined to publicly discuss their work, some light was shed on the scope of the investigation by Hunter himself, who let it be known in late 2020 that he's being investigated for tax evasion. And, in a recent interview, his ex-wife claimed she knew nothing about the matter.
You say you weren't really involved in the finances at all.
This was one of the harder parts for me to write and to acknowledge.
It's embarrassing to say that I ceded all financial control to my husband.
Do you know why you did that?
I liked the nice things, and I didn't want to think about the cost at which they were coming.
They like nice things. Well, you see Hunter Biden drive up in front of a restaurant in a car that cost $160,000. He's living in a rented house for about $20,000 in California, has ample legal representation, which is expensive.
In addition, the Justice Department is reportedly eyeing 2 possible crimes: money laundering and illegal foreign lobbying.
If you are going to try and influence US government officials for a foreign entity, then you have to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Hunter Biden was doing a lot of work with foreign entities, and there are many times where he steps very close to the line of trying to influence government officials.
Text messages from the laptop to Tony Bobulinski revealed that Hunter intentionally sought to avoid registering as a foreign agent.
We don't want to have to register as foreign agents under the FCPA, which is much more expensive than people who should know choose not to know.
Meanwhile, potential money laundering charges arose from some of the more shocking evidence found on the laptop.
Things like the big guy email, Hunter potentially holding 10% of the Chinese deal on behalf of Joe Biden. If you're taking money from people, but pretending it's for you when in fact it's for someone else, that could easily get you into the realm of money laundering.
In the summer of 2021, it suddenly got hot, and Devon Archer was being called, London Roberts was being called, Hunter's business associates, his former lovers, they were being asked intimate details about his finances. The most significant headline of the grand jury investigation was that witnesses are being asked, who is the big guy? We saw that really created panic in the White House. That's the only way you can describe how Ron Klain, the chief of staff to Joe Biden, behaved in an interview in April with George Stephanopoulos.
These are actions by Hunter and his brother. They're private matters. They don't involve the president, and they certainly are something that no one at the White House is involved in.
Those are really peculiar things which would put pressure on the US Attorney David Weiss in Delaware, because Joe Biden is the boss of the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who is the boss of David Weiss. And what his chief of staff was saying loud and clear was, stop investigating because there's nothing to see here. That would put a chill on any investigation.
The evidence is mounting, and the White House continues to stonewall all of us in the media. We constantly ask the White House for comment. We ask them questions about these issues that are incredibly important to the American people, and I get nothing back.
With Democrats in control of both the Senate and House of Representatives, there are no active investigations of Hunter. But could that change in 2023? Plenty of first families have been embarrassed by one of their own, but America has never quite seen one like this before. A man with a lot of secrets, a man who's not good at keeping them, a man that will have even more to come to light. Ruling family members abusing their power isn't something exclusive to the West. On the other side of the world, Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been consolidating power, silencing dissidents, and allegedly ordering murders. Check out this video to find out more in shocking detail.